I'm Hannah. I currently live in Melbourne and I am looking for a property in far north Queensland or Cairns.
So I'm Max, 28, and looking for a house in the Cairns area where myself and my partner both live and work.
How is the house hunting going?
Oh, never ending. And everything that is popping up is snapped up like that.
I've seen quite a few pop up even just in the last week.
But it's been really difficult to find something new. We just couldn't really be picky about looking at elevations.
Amy has recently bought a house on Queensland's Gold Coast. Hannah and Max are both separately looking to purchase their first homes, also on the Queensland coast in Cairns. And they're not alone. Along the Sunshine State coastline, construction is booming. ABS figures show more Australians moved to Queensland in 2020 than any other Australian state. But research also shows that many regions along the Queensland coast will be among the hardest hit by climate change.
So my name's Carl Mallon. I'm CEO of Climate Valuation, and we do work for banks and for homeowners to help them understand climate change risks in their decision making.
As an experiment, Carl's company, Climate Valuation, has agreed to take a look at Max and Hannah's prospective properties and Amy's recently purchased house, which is why we've blurred Amy's face. If the results are bad, it could affect the value of her property.
So we literally start with an address and we put that on a map. Then we gather information about the local weather, flooding risks, soils, forests, height above sea level, and that is combined with information that we have about the property or that we're going to assume about the property, okay? That will tell us its ability to withstand certain hazards.
Yeah, it certainly would sway my decision in that sense. So I'm really interested to see what the projections are for that.
There's going to be long-term issues with back surges in the canals and stuff like that as well. I'm not sure if this property is particularly affected by that.
Certainly if there were some houses that come back and there was a few considerations that we hadn't thought of beforehand, it will definitely sway how we think about that.
While we wait for their results to come in, I'm going to meet a guy whose ancestors have already survived climate change in an area many of us now know as the Gold Coast.
The last ice age was we think about 10,000 years ago, so the coastline was 40, 50 kilometres that way. So when the sea level started to rise over a few years, dozens of years, hundreds, thousands of years, is this coastline to where we are now began to flood this shelf. So over a long time, you have all these huge forests sucking up all the salt water, all the saline water. And what happens is all the trees began to rot and die. And we're here at Dullabudgera Creek, now one of my family names for it, with lots of rotting logs. Now my clan name, Gumbameri or Combameri if you want, is people who hunt the mangrove worms, and the mangrove or the cobra or the teredo worm is a worm that's found inside rotting logs.
You pointed out as well there's a midden back here?
Oh, there's middens everywhere. So all through here is camping grounds and fishing grounds. So we call it bundlebar. Bundlebar is our word for shell midden, just a pile of shells. I would not like to lose any of that.
Clinton's ancestors were able to survive climate change by moving and adapting. But that's not an easy option for communities on the Queensland coast.
Were there any surprises in there or not really for you guys?
One of the properties, the results came back and were probably what I expected. But the other two came in quite nicely, which was reassuring.
It does put my mind at ease a bit. And I mean, I suppose in that future thinking around that in changing climate and that, it certainly wasn't something that I'd thought about much of beforehand, but just having that even in the back of my mind and kind of knowing that we are set up quite well for that, is really sort of settling.
Yeah, there wasn't anything where I was like, oh, that's surprising. If they're saying that my roof structure is going to be impacted by riverine flooding, there's probably not that much point in me thinking about making my walls washable because my roof's going to come off as well. So it's kind of how much is feasible to achieve, and then is it going to make a big enough difference?
Now, there are things people can do. They could be picking up this and saying, well, I can do some things to this property to make it more resilient. The fence needs to come down, and I'm actually going to replace it with a flood wall, so that I can actually stop any floodwaters coming in. It's not cheap, but it might lift a property up to be a AA rating, and that's going to be very attractive to future buyers.
I think in general, we do need a bit more of a focus on sort of longer term longevity, whereas some of those houses that are up on the hill and that, they're beautiful, but it's already an area that's eroded. That's why you have that peak the way it is. But as long as there's money thrown at it, people don't seem to care, because it's not their problem.
It does make me think twice about a lot of things and sort of more deeply investigate beyond the average or normal due diligence.
I've got testimony after testimony of people who said, look, it just got to the point where I couldn't afford it anymore, and then they ticked a box and said, I don't want flood cover or something like that. Now at that stage, every year they're playing Russian roulette. We think it's now a matter of weeks and months before mortgage lenders start to refuse to lend mortgages on these properties. And the reason I say that is because we work for a lot of them.